Before I tell you this story, I want you to do something real quick. Look around the room you're in right now. Specifically, look at your vents. Because if this story is true, and according to police reports it is, then what happened to this man could technically be happening to anyone. So here's what happened. I live alone in a small studio apartment in Seattle. Nothing fancy. One room, tiny kitchen, bathroom on the side. And I'm a light sleeper. Always have been. That's important. Because when you're someone who wakes up at the smallest sound, you tend to notice when things don't feel right, even if you can't explain why. At first, it was harmless stuff. The milk carton would be sitting on the counter, even though I was positive I'd put it back in the fridge. The toilet seat would be up when I knew I hadn't used it. Cabinet doors cracked open just enough to notice, but not enough to panic. I told myself I was just tired. Seattle winters are dark, depressing, and isolating. I figured my brain was just filling in gaps that didn't exist. But then the feeling started. That unmistakable feeling of being watched. Late at night, lying in bed, I'd hear something. Not footsteps, not exactly. More like shifting, like fabric rubbing against drywall, like something moving very carefully so it wouldn't be heard. I'd freeze, hold my breath, stare at the ceiling vent in my kitchen.
Nothing ever happened. Weeks went by, and the anxiety became background noise. Until one morning, I noticed something that broke through all the rational excuses I'd been making. A muddy footprint. Just one, near the sink. Partial, like someone had stepped down and then vanished. That's when I thought, okay, either I'm losing my mind or something is very wrong. So I bought a cheap motion-activated camera. I told myself it was just to prove I was imagining things. I aimed it at the kitchen, making sure it could see the vent near the ceiling. I didn't expect to see anything. That night, I barely slept. The next morning, heart racing, I checked the footage. Hours of nothing. Then, at exactly 2 a.m., the camera turned on. The vent cover moved. Not fell, not rattled. It was pushed slowly. A hand came out first, pale, thin, fingers way too long. Then a head emerged, bald, sunken eyes, skin stretched tight over bone. The man pulled himself out of the vent like he'd done it 100 times before, because he had. He dropped to the floor silently and stood there, completely still, like he was listening. Then he walked to the fridge, opened it, and drank straight from my milk carton. No rush, no panic. Then he turned and looked directly into the camera and smiled. But somehow, that still wasn't the worst part. He walked over to my bedroom door, and he stood there for an entire hour. Barely moving, just breathing, watching me sleep on the other side of the door. At one point, he leaned in, pressing his ear against the door, like he was listening to my breathing, like he was memorizing it. Then, just as quietly as he appeared, he went back to the kitchen, climbed into the vent, and sealed it shut behind him. I don't remember calling the police. I just remember screaming. When they searched the crawl space above the ceiling, they found a sleeping bag, food containers, and a knife. They told me he'd been living there for 3 months. 3 months of watching. 3 months of listening. 3 months of waiting. They never caught him. I moved out the next day. And now, no matter where I live, I always check the vents. Because sometimes the scariest monsters don't break into your home. They were already there.